Hi, fellow Questers. Emma Sturton here, and I'm with you today for the next 15 to 20 minutes to take you on a little journey. Specifically, today we're going to dive into the theme of what we call mental health, and I use inverted commas here because we know when we refer in common terms to the healthcare system or mental health, actually what we're referring to is our perhaps sickness care system. And so I want to start by saying mental health to zone us into a certain theme that we're going to be looking at, but instead of using mental health, I'm going to use mentality, because in fact, when we are in flow and stages of health, we know that sometimes things are flourishing and sometimes things are under pressure, and that pressure then pushes us up perhaps to a new level of growth and transformation. And we're going to focus on this through the eyes of our mentality and how we view the world, and how we can bring about perhaps a mentality shift, or perhaps a cementing of our already fantastic mentality. Whatever comes about for us in this next 15 to 20 minutes will be perfect, and we're going to unpack it and unfold it, so you can make the most out of this time together. Before we start, however, I would like to introduce you to a young man, and this man comes from a line, his father, his father's father, his father's father's father, of insurance brokers and insurance company workers. And so as the son of the line of insurance workers, it was within his destiny, well, at least his grandfather and his father thought that he was going to step into insurance. And so what he watched his father do, and also his grandfather, was that he would wake up on Monday morning at 7 o'clock to beat the traffic and leave. And he would drive an hour through the heavy traffic to work, and he would sit in front of his computer and on his phone for 8 hours, and then he would drive that hour back, and he would repeat every week, perhaps taking a week off a year, every year for the next 25, 35, 40 years. And what he realized is that that wasn't the life that he would love. He knew that there was more possibilities out there, but what his father had told him is that this is the way that you take care of your family, this is the way that you put food on the table, this is the way that you keep a roof over your head, and this is how we as a family have always done it. He didn't know what, he didn't know how, he didn't know what action he needed to take. He just knew that repeated cycle within his family was not something that he wanted to continue forward for his life. There was more possibility there. And so, as the story goes, he had a look at what his father was doing, how it made his father feel, how his father delivered, and the actions that his father needed to take in order to get to that place. And we'll dive a little bit further into what unfolded with this young man, and how he got to the point and what he needed to do to change that pattern and to change that cycle. And that's something that we're going to have a look at today. And so if you can bear with me a moment, I'm going to bring up for you our little innate model, something that we can go through, have a look at, unpack, and dive into. So if you're a quester, you've seen our innate model many times. What we're going to have a look at today is creating our ability to attract, to nurture, to deliver, and to expand in ways that perhaps you haven't looked at before. Because often what we do when we think about a goal, which is here in our quadrant 1, which is in our land of possibilities, is we go off into dreamland. And this dreamland is a beautiful place to be. It's where we get to ponder, we get to go far beyond the possibilities of reality, perhaps. We get to make some big, grandiose decisions about what we'd love to bring into our life. And from here, often there is, and perhaps if you're like a few people in the world, perhaps even if you're like me, that we spend time here, but actually our steps and our direction doesn't actually allow us to tick these off. In fact, the new year has just rolled around, and I'm curious to know what is on your New Year's resolution list, and perhaps what was on there last year. And so what we're going to actually dive into today is looking at where we've come from in order to know where to go. You see, we really truly can't know where we're going until we know where we come from. I'm going to repeat that again. We don't know where we're going until we know where we came from. And with the story of the young man, he knew that he came from a lineage of insurance workers. And he knew that if he continued the pattern, that this would be his destiny as well. And so in order to create the ability to change that, he had to understand the patterns that were repeating in his family. So today, I want you to pick your 3 things that you decided you want to bring in for this year. Perhaps one of them is personal, and perhaps you can use 2 of them in your practice. Then what we're going to do is have a look at last year's goals, dreams, intentions, and plans. And so this might require you to pause the video and go back to your diary that you had for last year. Perhaps if you can get your hands on your diary from the year before, this is going to be useful as well. And so what we're wanting to do is to decipher some things here, because often what we know is that there is some intentions, some great dreams, goals, and possibilities that we yearn for each year, but we don't actually particularly nail, or we don't tick it off the list, or we have the greatest intention behind it, but nothing actually actions. And perhaps you have a dream that is so big that, of course, in 1 year it hasn't occurred, but you have been working towards it. Or you have a dream that is so big that you don't even know where to start, so you haven't even taken the first steps. So take a moment here. You're welcome to pause the video and go and find your intentions, dreams, goals, however you like to frame it, from this time last year, and if you can get your hands on it, the time before. So now that you have this in your hot little hands, what we're actually looking at here is a element of our innate model looking at our quadrant 2. So this is here. And this part is looking at the past. So what we've done, we've just looked at our possibilities, our ideas that we want to bring in our quadrant 1. Now we're having a look at our past. Now, have a look at 1 personal and perhaps 2 practice goals and dreams and aspirations from last year, and you can even bring in the year before, that you didn't quite nail. So the thing that you didn't tick off your list, perhaps it's on your list again for this year. And the reason why we're looking at that is because what we want to do is we want to piece apart what it is particularly that we didn't nail. What is something that we didn't get done particularly? And perhaps we can look at why we didn't get this done as well. So we're going to have a look at both quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. Because both these quadrants here are the past. We're referencing the past. So this is the past for quadrant 2 is the what, and the past for quadrant 3 is the why. So having a look at your list, picking a couple of things that you didn't get completed. What is it that I didn't get done? That I didn't get, get done. And here, as we move into quadrant 3, why didn't we get it done? Now, there is a huge opportunity here to point the finger at other people. But as you do that, I want you to stop and notice the 3 fingers that are pointing back to you. So why is it that these things didn't get done? Perhaps they didn't get done because you didn't delegate properly, because you needed something so, it was something so grandiose that you actually needed to draw in other people to help you do the things that you weren't great at, or perhaps you needed more men or people on the ground to start to work it. Perhaps you did delegate, but you weren't specific about the details, and so that's why things didn't get done. It's not that the person didn't do it correctly, it's that perhaps they needed more information. Or perhaps there was a level of procrastination. Perhaps you didn't hold yourself accountable, and you didn't put in place the things that you needed for accountability. So there are many reasons here. Perhaps you were using an old method that didn't work for you, that once worked for you, but didn't work for you this time. And we know this is that when we have something that we're really trying to do and we're using something that isn't working for us, it's the definition of insanity, isn't it? And there's a beautiful story attached to this one. Is, often the reason we repeat patterns, and what we're looking for here is patterns. So why is it that I didn't get X, Y, and Z done? And what you might start to see, and pause the video if you need to, is that the same reason why is showing up. And we might use this reason, or we might have initially used this reason to help us, and it might have served us in the past. It's like there was a girl, and she was swept into this rapids that were going down towards a waterfall, and she could barely keep her head above water. And what did she do? Is she grasped onto this log. Now, this log took her to the other side of the riverbank, and it allowed her to survive. It was the thing that got her to the other side of the bank. It allowed her to save her own life. Now, this little girl, because she was so grateful and because she thought that this was the one thing that was going to get her through, now she's on land, she's carrying this big log around with her. Because it served her so well in the past. It served her to get done what she needed to get done in that moment, which was survive. And you might see themes like this coming up in your why. Why is it? Well, perhaps there is an element of you're repeating something from the past that has served you that maybe is not serving you as well anymore. So give yourself some time to go through what it is that you didn't get done, and perhaps why you didn't get these things done. Now, the reason we're looking into the past, looking into the details, looking into the why, feeling into the why, we didn't speak so much about this, but the why is very gut-centered, and it's that often when we get to the why, there is that gut feeling that we get with it. You inherently know the why. Now, you can put more details on the paper, which is about the what, but inside of you, there's a big reason that perhaps your intuition is connected to. So you know the why. And the reason why we're looking into the past, into things that we've already done, is because our future is a representation of what's happened in the past. And the present moment, if we want to bring in something different, we need to do something that we haven't done yet. If we are expecting different results but doing the same thing, as we spoke about, this is that definition of insanity. And so we're diving into values, we're diving into beliefs, we're diving into habits here without actually speaking to them. But that's what we're unpacking when we're looking at the past. And this can be a big deep dive, or it can be quite superficial if you've already started to connect to perhaps some beliefs and some things that are not serving you. And from here, this is where we get to take some different action. We're not going to repeat the same thing. So at the end of this year, we still have those 2 or 3 things that we haven't actually ticked off of our list at all. In fact, we're going to get to the end of this year having some different results. We spoke about the little girl that used the log to cross the rapids, and it was her survival tool. Perhaps that was somebody that really helped you along in those down moments that you really needed them, but they really enjoy chaos and they enjoy that huge emotional fire, and they love all of that negative energy that in that moment you really needed them to unpack. But they're still in your life in whatever capacity. Maybe it's a CA, maybe it's a good friend, and that is your log not allowing you to step forward. Perhaps you need to learn more about delegating. Perhaps you are recently out of college and you've got that mentality of like, okay, in order to do something, somebody else has to hold me accountable, because forever I've been held accountable by my lecturer, by my teacher, by somebody in a hierarchical position. And so how am I to take that step forward without somebody telling me what to do? Because I know I can tell myself what to do, but I need that somebody else higher. Or perhaps you're so used to doing it all yourself, you're not in the process of letting other people in to create bigger waves and bigger changes, because we want to know, we know that if we want to go fast, we can do it alone. But if we want to go far and we want to really create some legacy within your life and within the lives of everybody else, it is not a one-man job. We are all in this together, and that's a huge part of why Quest is here. It's a huge part of what we endeavor to do in your life, is to be the shower of the way and walk beside you as you uncover huge pieces of the puzzle that we couldn't do without you, and you couldn't do without a team of people beside you. So if we want to go far, we go together. And this brings us to the next point here. This is our finishing up of the innate. So if we come back to our beautiful model here, we are looking at expansion. And when we're looking at expansion, we are looking at quadrant 4. We are looking at action. So we have begun in our quadrant 1 with our possibilities of all the things that we're going to bring in. And then we have moved to our quadrant 2, the past, of the things that we've perhaps tried and really wanted to bring in, but we actually didn't make it. We've looked at the why that may not be the case. And now it's about taking apart all of the things that didn't work and creating a new and putting that into some action. And this action is not merely acting on the steps that you planned to take when you were thinking about all of the different big ideas and possibilities that you want to try again to tick off the ones that you didn't get done from the past year or the past 2 years. This action step is all about a mentality shift. So we know what didn't work. We know why it didn't work. And so this action step is not necessarily choosing the steps to take in order to tick the box of all of your hopes and dreams. It's choosing an action step of how you are going to do things differently, how you are going to show up differently. How are you going to let go of the log? How is it that you are going to look at this particular expansion in a new way? How is it that you are going to create a new version of yourself this year in your personal goal? Something that you haven't done. Perhaps it's looking at a belief and breaking it down. Perhaps it's creating some new self-talk. What is an action step that you are going to take, which may not be ticking off the list of the things that you actually have to do, but it's looking behind the scenes. And if you deal with the action of creating a different you in the present moment, what you will start to see is different results. And that is the point here. The point is that you have had everything that you need under your nose this entire time. This process of shifting the mentality and looking back at where you came from in order to change your trajectory or know which way to move forward, sometimes just requires a shift in light. It's that old folk story of the husband and the wife, and the husband has worked so tirelessly hard his whole life, and he's sick of it. And he heard from the magical gnome that if he travels over 3 gigantic mountainous terrains and then turns left at the huge river, he will find underneath the bridge this big treasure. And his wife says, why would you do this? Why would we leave? We've got a big fig tree out the back that feeds us when it's in fruit. We have a perfectly capable cow that I can make cheese from its milk, and we can drink its milk. We don't need more. And he's like, but I want to find the treasure. I know I need it. And so as much as she tries to convince him otherwise, he takes off and he travels across these 3 huge mountainous terrains. He turns left at the river, and underneath the bridge he sits for 1 day, he sits for 3 days, he starts to dig, and he finds nothing. And after 2 weeks of being under this bridge, hoping that this treasure, and desperately looking for this treasure, he decides to pack up his backpack and then travel home. And as he does, this gentleman comes and says, I've been watching you. What are you doing here? And he says, well, I came to find treasure. I came to find everything that I ever hoped and dreamed for. And the man says, oh, I was told that if I turn right at the river and cross 3 big mountainous terrains, and I go into this little town, that I'd find a fig tree. And under the fig tree, there's all the treasure I ever would want. And he said, but I don't believe that stuff. I'm not willing to do that. And in that moment, the man rushes home. He turns right at the river. He crosses his 3 big mountainous terrains back to his wife. And underneath the fig tree, he digs and he finds the treasure. And this is the point here. You have every single thing inside of you that you need to create a world in this moment that you love and desire and are happy for. It's not that anything needs to change. We simply just need to bring awareness to the things in our life that perhaps aren't working so well, or perhaps the repeated patterns and habits that aren't serving us. And as we shed light on that, all of a sudden we see other possibilities and other opportunities, and the treasure is underneath our nose. And just like the young man that didn't want to become another insurance worker like his father and his father's father and his father's father, He looked at the past, he looked at the what, he looked at the why, and he decided to take different action. He decided to look at other things and other ways that he could break it all down and have a life that he wanted to live. And then he went back into possibility and he went through that beautiful model that we've seen so many times. And so this is a mentality shift. This is about your mental health. This is about creating the future that you want and living in the moment that you have and knowing that you already have everything that you need. So thank you for spending this time with me. Go back over your notes, have a read, have a breathe, and enjoy. It's been a pleasure.